Enough! You are all of you beneath me. I am a god, you dull creature, and I will not be bullied by that.
Puny god.
Well, hello again. Sorry it's been such a long time since I uploaded anything, but you must remember that I do this as a hobby, not a full-time job. So I'm basically writing, uploading, and editing in my spare time.
You're welcome.
Maybe it'll become a full-time job one day, but that is about 1 million subscribers away. But that should say more about this channel than anything else, the fact that I have no incentive to make these critiques but to tear Amazon Rings of Power down to shreds. That's how palpable my fury is.
It's fury!
But seriously though, thanks to all of my new subscribers, I'm happy that my incessant rants on the internet are a bit comical, entertaining, and hopefully enlightening to some of you. Today we will be reviewing The Rings of Power, Episode 2. And yeah, I know that it's been out for like 2 weeks now, but I don't care. Like I said, I'm doing this to satiate my inner appetite for destruction of sacrilegious Tolkien media. So very similar to the first episode, the second episode has good that is catapulted into obscurity by all of the bad. That being said, we will still be bringing the good to the light in order to do this critique fairly. Rings of Power continues to have amazing spectacle and grandeur. In this episode, we're introduced to the magnificence of Khazad-dûm, later to be known as Moria. The costumes and sets of the dwarves gives them a true feeling of carving their lives into the mountains with lots of dynamic shapes and symbols, giving the impression that they really have lived under the Misty Mountains for thousands of years. That was beautiful to see. It should also be noted that the dwarves actually look like dwarves, something that only calls to light the utter disregard for other species looking anything like the written characteristics that they are flipping based off of. Come on guys, if you're gonna make dwarves look like dwarves, why the hell can't you make elves look like elves? Whoops! See, as you can tell, I've already fallen off the horse examining all of the good stuff, because it's really hard. Continuing, there's one scene in the episode that is probably more meaningful than all of the others, and it's when Durin the Third is calling out Elrond for dismissing his entire life because of his inner immortality. It is cool sentiment that Durin now holds a grudge against Elrond because Elrond saw nothing wrong with not visiting him for decades. The frustration that Durin has is poignant and has some of the better, not great, acting of the show. It is a concept that I'm glad was sort of fleshed out. Elves see no difference in 10 years or 100 years because they live forever, and this episode takes a look at how relationships can deteriorate when the passing of time is looked at as nothing but an annoyance to those on whom it has no effect. It was interesting, and I would love to see more of that. This is the one that I also never thought would come out of my mouth. Disa is not the absolute worst thing to ever happen. Yes, her being black and a dwarf makes about as much sense as a straitjacket being used as a prom dress, but her character and her relationship to Durin was cute. She shows motherly affection to Elrond and serves as a guide to helping them build their relationship, and I didn't hate her, beardless though she may be, so that is a plus. What else? Oh yes, there's also some good forced perspective, albeit most definitely a trick of CGI rather than actual forced perspective. And also the music was still great with some lovely violin solos, and the title card is kind of cool. The sand moving thing was kind of weird, but it was visually pleasing. Gotta compete with all those other epic title cards these days rather than focusing on a good story, am I right? Whether or not a show is trash or not, its intro will ensure you want to watch it, right? And the orcs have some cool costumes. That's, yeah, some good prosthetic makeup is going on, you can tell. Anyway, now that I've gotten that out of the way, it's time to plunge into the smut-filled catch basin that is the rest of the episode. You ready? No? Too bad!
Prepare yourself.
Remember how I talked about how the sets and costumes and overall aesthetics to the show were quite spectacular? Yeah, there's a reason for that. It's because the show has no story.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
They have deliberately spent their billion-dollar budget on making the show look pretty to distract you from the fact that they are doing the cinematic version of twiddling their thumbs until something happens. Yes, this does carry on over to episode 3 as well. There is so much filler in episode 2 that I basically had to re-watch the whole episode to prepare for this review. That's how dedicated I am, because that's how forgetful the entire damn thing was. I don't remember what freaking happened. Is anything going to happen?
I don't know!
Is the story gonna go anywhere?
I don't know!
Should I give a flying flagon about any of this metaphorical fecal matter?
Probably not.
I don't freaking know! The show literally spends so much time with the most trivial scenarios giving the illusions of an epic setup, only to have nothing actually impactful happen anyway. The Harfoots spend the entire flipping episode pushing not Gandalf around in a cart and feeding him flipping slugs while he has temper tantrums and plays with dragonflies, shoving in every single kid befriends animal / robot cliched storyline possible. Elrond spends half the episode in a stupid rock bashing contest with Durin that leads to him just having a conversation with him about his problems and dilemma 2 seconds later. Galadriel spends the entire episode on a flipping raft conversing with not Sauron about how she's an elf and he's not an elf, and about how she is the best thing to ever happen to anybody and he's a piece of cow dung. Wow, what an interesting conversation. I am so glad that we spent $1 billion on this script. Arondir gets his whatever diverse black elf guy goes into a pit in a town that has clearly been ravaged by orcs to see if there are any orcs that ravage the town. Again, guys, what an amazing script. Too bad we didn't spend any time on making our characters have clear goals and aspirations that we as an audience could get behind.
Really?
There is so much filler in this episode that it makes a jelly-filled donut look like it's being healthy. Get on with the story, will you? We are now 2 hours in and basically nothing impactful has happened yet. Now, very few people would argue, oh Elijah, they're doing a really big build-up so that there's a massive payoff at the end. Yeah, maybe good writers have some sense of that, but these writers have demonstrated that they have no idea how to write a script, and they have no skill when it comes to pacing. They are completely incompetent at making any of their characters interesting enough to occupy the screen with anything resembling charisma. The amount of doubts that I have that the writers can actually make any sort of meaningful payoff could fill a freaking ocean. The Patrick moron and JD pleb only know how to put in action scenes and manufactured conflict to do nothing but pad out the runtime. By the end of episode 2 in the masterpiece and literally historically significant Breaking Bad, Walter White had literally killed a dude and was working with Jesse to dispose of the body, cooked a ton of meth, had his 50th birthday party. The show had established meaningful characters and relationships, and also the protagonists and antagonists, had several different action scenes, and all of that in less time than the Rings of Power has done anything. Because people knew how to write and captivate their audience back then, and knew to get to the point in a TV show, rather than wasting time on situations and squabbles that have nothing to do with the overarching story. Because those writers were not dim-witted narcissists with collectively that's right, two pieces of media accredited to them. Seriously, how did these chumps get given the creative license over the most renowned epic fantasy of all time? You tell me.
That makes no f***ing sense!
We are 2 hours in, and Elrond is nowhere near closer to getting what he wants to help Celebrimbor. The Harfoots are nowhere near knowing who the hell this crackpot is. Forced diversity, Elf still has literally no goals or personality or charisma to build a meaningful story on, and Karen Ladriel is still an overbearing, egotistical shrew. Even though her present circumstances would have humbled the most prideful person on the planet. Please get the ball rolling.
This is taking too long! Enough jibber-jabber, just get to the point, okay?
My dad, who isn't even really a Lord of the Rings nerd but still loves good cinema, was clocked out after the first episode. Remember all of those good things that I said about the show? Well, guess what? Apparently there is no limit to the absurdity that the poor excuse for writers can shove in, because every single good thing that happens in this show is negated 2 seconds later by something else incredibly and utterly brainless. It's almost impressive how efficiently the writers are able to shoehorn their own contradictions. Elrond literally spends most of his time on screen in this rock-smashing dick-measuring contest to get an audience with Durin. Kind of a cool scene, I guess, but is completely invalidated when they take the dwarvy elevator, which looked fake as hell, by the way, together and just talk to each other anyway. Oh great, we just spent 20 minutes in this episode to get an audience with the king. Guess all we had to do is take the same elevator together.
You are so dumb. You are really dumb. For real.
And oh yeah, I was trying to find out what the heck Sigin Tarag means. It literally just means longbeards in Kuzdul, which is dwarf language. So there you have it. A made-up challenge to create a made-up conflict to fill time. There was no weird stupid rock-breaking contest. Y'all just ran out of ideas.
You're not as smart as you think you are.
Durin and Elrond's touching conversation on immortality is completely overshadowed by the fact that the next scene turns into basically a 90s sitcom of him pretending to be mad at Elrond when his feelings felt genuine 2 seconds ago. It is also completely overshadowed by the fact that the dwarves can live up to 250 years. 20 years is nothing to an elf. Yeah, it's nothing to a dwarf either, you pompous windbags. The whole conversation would have actually made sense if dwarves didn't live almost like 3 times as long as humans. I know I praised this scene in the beginning, but considering the context of the world Tolkien set up, it would have made 1,000 times more sense if it had happened between Elrond and some human. Not a dwarf. They live a long time, okay?
Okay.
The dinner with Durin is just a meaningless conversation that again could probably be in a 90s sitcom, overshadowing any of the serious tones that had just been established 2 minutes ago. Forced diversity elf, whose name I still literally don't know how to pronounce, just crawls through some caves for 20 minutes only to get friggin' captured anyway. Glad we wasted everybody's time when the exact same result could have been made in about half the time, or half the padding, if you will. Kieran Ladriel and not Sauron spend the entire time just floating on a raft, while there are some beautiful shots and big old sea monster just so that we could have a cool shot in the trailer. Oh, there are sea monsters in Middle-earth? Oh cool, that's something that we've never seen before and would have huge ramifications to all nautical travel. But anyway, break the raft and move on, I guess. Rapid fire stupidity. Although this episode did give way to one of the funniest things I've ever seen in this show.
The elf let it right to us!
That literally made me laugh out loud. She can fight and kill any troll by herself, but heaven forbid a skinny, starving lunatic gives her a little push. Don't worry, people, Kieran Ladriel is still the strongest character in the show, probably in all of Middle-earth. Not only because she continually tells us that over and over and over. She also spends the entire damn episode trying to, tie this damn rope. I sat there thinking, what the heck is the point, darling? What are you doing? You're tying a rope to a piece of wood that's attached to a raft. What's the deal? At one point, she's even thrown from the boat during a storm, and I thought the writers would actually give this strong female character a scene of weakness and needing to be saved. But nope! Not Sauron cuts Kieran Ladriel from the wreckage she's caught in, and the next shot is literally her extending her hand to pull him onto the raft. Because heaven forbid we show a woman in need of a man's help for even a microsecond. She still has to be the dominant one in this situation. This was so clunky and awkward and nonsensical in every way, and also so forced. It had to be shown that Kieran Ladriel is still the strong one, and not Sauron, aka Halbrand, is the weak one. They're just giving themselves the biggest pat on the back for making strong female characters. I stand by what I said before. If there's a straight white male in this show, he's either incompetent, evil, or just stupid, while every single female character is superior in every way. We are 2 hours in and still nobody likes her. Prepare yourself. Yeah, no way, Kieran. It's not like I've been stranded on this bloody raft longer than you have. Please tell me how to do my job. Oh, should I go and get help because all I've got is this dinky little knife and 0 upper body strength? No problem, I'll just chop its head off like a cutting butter, even though it just threw a table across the room like a dead kitten. Speaking of that table throw, while there are some scenes of wonderful spectacle, they are completely cancelled out by the CGI that sticks out like a sore thumb. Case in point. Where did this billion-dollar budget go? Into not buying beards for dwarves and not buying wigs for elves, apparently. Not Frodo and not Samwise argue for an entire episode that they shouldn't touch the big naked man and then show him in a wheelbarrow 10 seconds later. How the freak did they move this guy? He's like 3 times both their sizes combined. And then of course we gotta have a little scene where he's like rolling down the hill. Oh no, we gotta go catch him because that hasn't been done in every single comedy movie ever made. The script has no improvement from the first episode, by the way. It is still incompetent writers trying to make their words sound Tolkien-esque and literally just giving up and using dialogue from the far superior Peter Jackson trilogy or making up some stupid allegory in their speaking. Speaking of them comparing it to the Peter Jackson trilogy, they all of course have a couple other callbacks to the Peter Jackson trilogy because they're not good enough writers to write anything original for themselves.
Tables filled with salted pork.
The salted pork is particularly good.
Salted pork.
And enough malt beer to fill the artery.
Malt beer.
Tolkien is very, very dead, my friends. And this show just proves that. They continue to discount the lore at every turn like they always have. Yeah, Feanor was a great craftsman, but he was also responsible for the deaths of millions upon millions of elves because of his pride and need for vengeance. Gandalf didn't come to Middle-earth until like 1,000 years into the Third Age, and he also did it by freaking boat nonetheless, you clodpoles. You guys are just deciding to plunge him into the story, even though he has no right to be there. Durin the Third and Durin the Fourth were not father and son. They were reincarnations of the first Durin, yada yada, all that stuff. Oh, it's just whatever, you know. Y'all just decided to discount the entire mythos of a character for no flipping reason. Anyway, let's wrap this up. This episode was basically no improvement on the first and gives me like no hope that the show will ever actually get interesting. By the time I was done with the second episode, my brain was so boiled that I had to rejuvenate it with an actual good piece of cinema. So now I've decided to do a segment at the end of each of my reviews of each episode of The Rings of Prime where I tell you what you should watch instead of this heretical tripe.
Thank you.
The movie I watched was the classic 1993 Western cowboy film Tombstone, starring renowned actors like Kurt Russell, Val Kilmer, Sam Elliott, and Michael Biehn, telling the awesome epic story of the state marshal Wyatt Earp who goes on a blood-ridden vengeance rampage to establish laws in the West after the murder of his brother, forcing him out of retirement. It's awesome, it's action-packed, it has more iconic lines than the entire Star Wars trilogy, and it will be a much better 2 hours and 14 minutes of your life spent than this poor excuse for cinema. Go check it out, seriously. Remember, all of my listeners, that I'm forcing myself through this balderdash for your sake. The least you could do is thank me and click that baby subscribe button. Anyway, that's a wrap on episode 2. Final verdict, it was 95% hogwash.
A big bag of shit!
Could the series get better? Absolutely. There's a chance, howbeit infinitesimal, that the show could improve in its 6 remaining episodes. But I doubt it. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Be watching out for episode 3's review. No, I don't know when that will be, but hopefully caffeine, no sleep, and gluing myself to the keyboard will bring it to fruition in the near future. So, thanks for enduring. Peace off. Piss off.